We're here today to talk about smarter cities, and I'm really interested to hear a little bit of background about the initiative and what IBM is going to be kind of bringing into this. Clearly a very exciting field for architects going forward. There's a lot of challenges, both with existing cities that are, like old cities like London, and the newer cities in China that are kind of just starting from almost a blank sheet. So, are you encompassing kind of all of that in your program? Or?
Absolutely, and it may be worth just stepping back a little bit and looking at how society's evolved over the centuries. And as part of the centenary year for IBM, we've actually published a book, Making the World Better, which kind of underpins what IBM has been doing over the last 100 years. And what's very apparent is that as you get new information, as you start to understand more about the world that we live in through information, different forms of information, you start to be able to build new maps. And those new maps give us increased understanding of what's possible, what's viable. And that creates completely new behaviours and new actions that people take. And that kind of process happens in phases. So as we got to things like the advent of the telescope, you can start to see the galaxies in better detail. As you start to get scanning atomic microscopes, you can start to see the atomic structures. And we're right at the point now where technology can connect to the built world in a very direct way. So rather than getting information which is coarse-grained and averaged through big pictures or large maps, you're getting very fine-grained data. And that allows us to start to think about the systems at a very different level. And it allows us to start to optimize the systems at a very different level. And so when you look at the use of infrastructure, the use of the systems that the city depends on, whether it's water, whether it's energy, it's transportation, being able to embed technology very closely to the system, get real-time, accurate information, you can start to transform the usage patterns and start to take waste out of those systems. And that's really what we mean by smarter cities. It's embedding technology into the systems and starting to think of the systems as a collection of integrated systems rather than discrete, disconnected systems.
Sure.
And using what Rashid, underpinning all that is intelligence. Is essentially what we're talking about here.
I mean, the word integrated use. I mean, it's something that's been apparent to me for a while. Is that a lot of cities are evolving not in an integrated way. In that, for instance, the planning departments are basically responding to an application.
Absolutely.
They don't have kind of budgets or often the mandate to be able to have a kind of a citywide strategy. And is that one of the challenges that you guys are facing?
And it depends very much which country you're talking to, and that's the issue. I mean, I still maintain that the biggest challenge is not the technical integration; it's the organisation integration, and actually getting water companies, energy companies, utility, telecommunications, the city leadership to actually work together in an effective way to actually do something together for the benefit either of society, the economy, or the environment, and kind of make it sustainable. Because ultimately, organisations and people will default to their silos at some point.
Of course.
And that's I think that's a real struggle here. And compared to other countries where perhaps in the States where the city mayor classically has a much greater say and can influence a larger number of city domains.
But the other thing I'm picking up on too is, I mean, you talked about having the data for the first time. I mean, that's really interesting because we're running for the first time a program for effective architecture, and we're running that with Bureau Happel, the engineering company, because there is an incredible lack of data about a building's performance or whatever when it's finished. But we have all the means now with the complex technology that we are actually able to go back and look at it and see how effective the building is actually been, not just from its performance, but its actual core use of school function, full school facility, education facility, or something like that. And they're seeing this as kind of now is the point where the information's there, we have to get it and we have to use it, and then we can really kind of make a step change in some of the things we're designing.
More evidence, isn't there now?
Exactly, more evidence, but I want to go back to that point of organisational boundaries, because the key to a city's survival is what value it creates in the global landscape. And unless the city is exporting value in some shape or form and then reportioning value back into the city, it doesn't grow, it doesn't have the financial capital to be able to make progress. And what you find now is the organisational boundaries stop you from being able to capture the next wave of real value. So by having a transport system which inhibits a movement of goods, dependable transportation, you're not able to be competitive. Organisations and firms sat inside the city can't be competitive against new emerging cities which are much more integrated and so on. And so that's part of the organisational battle. But because of the inherent fragmentation of the systems, there is no way of making unified decisions. And you can't drive a decision in system A and get value in system B. And organisational stop you doing that.
An example of the kind of dilemma is we now know through some congestion charging schemes that we've implemented that there are tangible benefits to the health and well-being of the citizens that live in the city. Right. And actually, in one particular case, there's an increase in revenue at the retail sector because the city's become more attractive. Right. So the dilemma now is, if you were to implement a congestion scheme for your particular city, how about approaching the health service directly to help sponsor it? Well.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Because you've also touched on one of my other big beliefs is that it's great having an aim to be sustainable. Yeah. But I've always said, but to make that work, it's got to be sustainable financially.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've already got that, so right. You've already understood this connection is so vital because no one's going to throw money at it for the sake of it to feel good.
Social outcomes, economic outcomes, as well as environmental.
And if you can make that work, then that's really exciting.
And that's exactly where the information plays a huge role, because once you can start to see the real data, you can make very concrete, tangible assumptions and assertions on where the value sits, and you can make a proposition to organisation A and organisation B and say this is what you both could create in terms of new value by collaborating. Yeah. And the role of an architect or a management consultant is to be the catalyst, the innovation catalyst, to be able to see that new value that you can capture. And that role of influence and innovation and catalysing some of those new systems is exactly where we've got to start building real capability, because if we don't do that, then we won't open up the new value. We won't be able to create the value for the city leaders.
Yeah. So looking a little bit deeper into the program itself, how would you typically? Who are you engaging with? Is it the cities? Is it architects firms? How are you?
Depends on the. I'll give you my. We'll have to. It's a big topic, okay? But it depends. It depends on the project. So I have a view. I'm focused on the UK, and I think there are kind of three layers of capability and three ways in which you can approach the Smarter Cities Challenge in the UK. If you're a moderate to large size city, one option you've got is to start off around one of the domains around the edge. So it could be around looking at doing something smart with your buildings, doing something smart around your transport, and we see a few cities doing that kind of thing. Another way of starting is saying, well, hang on a minute, before we do anything, let's create a vision backed up with evidence that differentiates us from the city just up the road, or that actually people can engage with, backed up with evidence, and then we'll work from the centre out. And the other way is looking at this issue of actually what we need is infrastructure to help integrate all these different domains before we do anything. Yeah. And cities are at different stages. So, some cities want to do all of that, and other cities want to start off at the end, around the edges, do some controlled experimentation, and then worry about how does that influence our vision going forward. So, that's just kind of the portfolio approach that we have here. But it's different depending on how you on cities overseas and stuff.
One thing that is probably sort of parallel to what IBM's doing is there were a number of reports in the papers about 2 or 3 years back of cities developing Wi-Fi clouds to enable the whole city to use one network. Is that presumably that would really boost your gathering of data and things, but it's something like that.
So it's fascinating when you start looking at that. The volume of information you need here, and you can saturate the best clouds very, very quickly. You start to look at the number of video cameras and how much real-time video feed you need to have. You start to look at the scale of sensors that you need to have. You imagine sensors in every single building looking at every one of the aspects of movements. So yes, they're helpful, but that's not sufficient. Okay? And you've got to be able to get to the next level. And the way we look at it on a global scale is you start to think about the citywide issues which unify all the citizens and the organisations. So if you can pick the issues that matter across the whole city, you start to get a unifying focus on what you're going to work on.
Absolutely. I mean, you must see this. You must see cities in the UK that have got a generic, shall we say, a generic vision, a generic strategy that doesn't particularly differentiate it. Isn't appealing.
Yeah.
And Rashik's right. That there is always got to be something about the city that unites, the businesses and the society and the communities. Yeah, right. And in some cases, it's a case of unpicking it directly. Now that could be through, online jams. It could through sort of traditional consultations, or what's increasingly becoming the case now through social media analytics.
You've got so many constraints on how and where technology can apply, and in many ways, that is really exciting for our technology people, because they can innovate the technology to solve some of the constraints that the physical environment has. Yeah. So in some ways it's more exciting for our technical guys to work on some of those projects than greenfield ones, whilst on the greenfield, by designing in the technology from day one. And that's where a very strong partnership between us and the architect is absolutely key, because often the architect doesn't know where technology can be embedded and how positioning it in the right phase, in the right place in the design, gives you maximum advantage. So getting that leverage of applying technology early is absolutely vital.
The reality is, I'm certainly looking at the UK, there are maybe 3, maybe 4 tiers of cities. I'm talking about anything that's over 100,000 people. And, at the top you've got the cities that don't seem to have really been affected by the recent recession, and at the bottom you've got cities with real issues around unemployment and depravity. And so, the vision of success over the next 5-10 years is going to be quite different for those. In one case, it's how do we stop this city sort of going under, and the other case is how can we compete on the world stage with German and Chinese counterparts. And the point about smarter cities and smarter technology and insight and intelligence is actually it can be used to help to get the right first-time decisions, to help resolve some of the issues, as well as helping get a city to the next stage of economic success. It doesn't always have to be something very, very visible, in which case it can be a channel to facilitate communication, collaboration, citizen engagement, or it can be around sort of putting sensors in buildings and railway tracks and so on. So there's no one answer.
I mean, it's just to reassure you on that, I usually ask architects when I interview them what they see, what technology they'll be using themselves in 20 years' time, and they would just laugh and think that's a ridiculous question, because when you go back 20 years, they were on drawing boards.
That's my 5.
I mean, half the time they didn't have computers or anything, and probably 20 years ago they did just. But I think it was that somebody cited to me the Lloyd's building in London, that when they started off, when it was on the drawing board, they had big monitors. Right. And they were black and white, or green and white, whatever it was, green and black. And I think they had 3 air-conditioned handlers on the top because of the heat generated by those things. But during the design phase, everyone went to colour, and it went up, so they had to increase the number. And then, 2 years after it had been running, they went to flat screen, and they could actually throw 2 away because the technology is just in using it where you obviously know. And that's it's very hard.
I completely agree. Completely agree. And that's worth just drawing on the words that we're using. We don't talk about smart cities. We don't talk about intelligent cities. We talk about smarter cities, right? And the use of the word smarter is quite important because it's a journey. As you make every step, you start to get new information. You start to see the world differently, and you can see where you can make further progress. And every step along the journey gets you new progress. And yes, you may plot some kind of long-term visions, but as you make progress, you may adjust that vision. Nobody can be right, I think.
No, absolutely.
Well, Rashik, Frank, thank you very much for your time, and honestly wish you the best luck with your journey. I think it's a really exciting project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.